So, on March 12, Eden Knight, a 23-year-old trans woman, posted a note to a social media detailing her intention to die by suicide after her parents repeatedly confiscated her hormone therapy at treatment. So, just so you guys know, Saudi Arabia is incredibly barbaric. They're arguably worse than Iran. I think they're actually one of the worst. Like, they still do stonings. They just barely allowed women to drive 2 years ago. Like, they're very, very, very barbaric, and they're very behind when it comes to women's rights, let alone LGBTQ plus and trans rights. So this isn't something that should surprise you if it's coming out of Saudi Arabia, right? Because Saudi Arabia, they do a lot of PR with American influencers. So the public view of Saudi Arabia isn't that bad towards the average American. But if you actually look at what Saudi Arabia does, they're a terrible country. Her note went on to describe a lack of family support, uncertain legal status, and third party manipulation that ultimately forced her to detransition and leave the US for her family home in Saudi Arabia, a country known for its violent hostility towards LGBTQ plus people. I hope that the world gets better for us, Eden wrote. I hope that our people get old. I hope we get to see our kids grow up to fight for us. I hope for a trans rights worldwide, which I think at some point we will get there. I just think it's going to be a long road of battling, different legal bills and just like different social rhetorics and stuff like that. Not long after the note was published, posts from her family's accounts on Twitter and Telegram stated that she had died. Vice News spoke with 4 of her friends to learn who Eden was and reviewed past messages between Eden and her friends to piece together what happened to her. Eden's story highlights the dire consequences associated with forcing a trans person to detransition and the institutional failures that made it difficult for her to consistently access life-saving healthcare and a safe place to live. Her note, which is supported by the recollections of her friends, as well as private messages she sent, also described the involvement of private investigators who contract for the US government in an effort to get her to return to her family. So this is the part where the story actually gets murky, right? Because there's a lot of these situations where Saudi Arabia will do very unethical things, especially in America, because they have America by the neck. I don't know how else to explain it. They get away with almost anything they do. Like, just to put it in reference for y'all, let's talk about 9/11 really quick. Most of the hijackers in the 9/11 airplanes were Saudi Arabian. Okay, only a couple of them. One of them was from Dubai, another one was from Lebanon, and was from Egypt. Like, most of them are Saudi Arabian, and no one talks about this, right? People just assume that most of the hijackers were Afghan or Iraqi. They actually weren't. None of the hijackers in the 9/11 attacks were either Iraqi or Afghan. So just to give you a reference of how much they get away with a lot of shit, when they want to get away with it. And the American government is kind of like cucked by them. We have seen these reports and are studying these allegations, said a State Department representative. We want our trans kids to grow up into adults. We want our young people to be able to live fully. This story is just so wild. So Eden was living in the US while in college and came out as trans during the COVID-19 pandemic, according to a public Word document summarizing Eden's story that was assembled by her friends. Multiple friends told Vice News that she was well-read, so fucking smart, and hilarious. They said that she wanted to be a leader and an advocate for trans people and to support trans people in Saudi Arabia specifically. In spring of 2022, after Eden had finished college and was seeking pathways to remain in the US, she ended up living in Columbus, Georgia with a married couple, Bailey and Hayden, who were looking to host and support homeless trans people. The pair told Vice News they became close with Eden. Bailey and Eden got their nails done together, while Hayden recalls being floored by how smart Eden was when they talked about economics. She was like an aunt to their child, Bailey told Vice News. Shortly after moving in, Eden started her medical transition. So this is all very recent. Like, she just started recently transitioning, right? During the COVID pandemic, which I'm assuming was like the start of 2020. Victoria, a mutual friend of Bailey's and Eden's, went to her first Pride event with Eden in June 2022. The same week, Eden had started hormone replacement. In August, according to the note, Eden was contracted by a man offering to help her fix her fractured relationship with her parents. Hayden told Vice News that this was a phone call, which he overheard because Eden had put it on speaker. The man on the phone said, complimented half-naked photos of Eden he'd found online. I remember that really struck me as odd, and that it was my first red flag with the guy. He was just a fucking creep. Hayden and Bailey said the man didn't bring them into his conversations with Eden, despite the fact that she was living with them. That man, according to both Eden's note and direct messages, which she sent at the time, were reviewed by Vice News, was Michael Pokalieko, CEO of Special Investigations, a Washington area government contractor specializing in investigations, intelligence, and cyber, as well as a novelist and former Republican official whose website describes him as a combat aviator, Navy commander, political candidate, and venture capitalist and global corporate chair. Oh, God. How can you? Ugh. Oof, I'm sorry, y'all. That's like every single horrible title you could get into like one title. In a private message, Eden described him as famous. Neither Palico, I can't say his name. I'm just gonna say PP. Neither PP. No, I'm not gonna say PP. Neither P. Neither P nor the chair of special investigations responded to requests to comment. P, she wrote in her note, claimed he was a fixer and wanted to fix the issue that was between me and my parents. I thought this was impossible. I'm transgender. They are strict conservative Muslims. But I decided I would give it a shot because it can't hurt, right? Hayden and Bailey said Eden spoke with P weekly. In her note, Eden wrote that these calls seemed innocuous and honestly pretty helpful, and she ultimately moved out of her Georgia house in October after P, according to her note, and multiple friends encouraging her to go to Washington, D.C. I mean, this would also make sense because if she wanted to be a trans advocate, right, and like work on legislation and bills and stuff like that, I would assume that, you know, Washington DC would want to be one of the places that she would want to live and get started with that. Victoria told Vice News that Eden, who was in the US without authorization, said she'd hoped to obtain US citizenship there. Eden wrote in her note that P and his associate Ellen Cole, who did not reply to a request to comment, along with a Saudi lawyer named Bader, met her at a train station and took her to a hotel. Then Bader became her sole point of contact. He pampered me, Eden wrote. Oh shit, this is creepy. If you have any information about Bader or other aspects of the story, contact reporters. This is giving me the creeps. Bader, according to the note, got Eden an apartment, bought her meals, and put her in touch with therapists, all while subtly trying to convince her to detransition. In a November 1st text exchange between Eden and Hayden, reviewed by Vice News, Eden spoke of her apartment and sent Hayden a picture of her view. He tried to get me to be normal, gave me examples of feminine men, and said that they are transgender but they are hiding it, and that's better to hide it. Told me stories personally about people who knew that successfully hid it, she wrote. Over time, Eden wrote, she became entirely dependent on him. Running away was not an option. Yo, I did not know how fucked up this story was. Okay. Oh my god, I'm done. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. It's so sad. Okay, it's good. It's good. We got this. Oh my god, I've never cried reading a story. Okay, we're good. Sorry, guys. I don't know what, like, happened there. I usually am able to disassociate myself from, like, stories, but this one, like, is really fucked up. Okay. She was also worried due to her legal status that if she ran away, she'd ultimately be deported, which honestly makes sense because, like, if you're a refugee and you don't really know how the system works, obviously you'd fear getting deported. Bailey, Hayden, and Victoria all say that their contact with Eden drastically decreased after she moved to Washington and communication became more fragmented. But Victoria told Vice News that she had heard bits and pieces about how the person Eden was with forced her to dress masculine and pressured her to stop hormone therapy. Vice News reviewed Discord messages between Eden and her close friends Zoe, in which Eden makes reference to her lawyer, Bader, who she described as representing himself as Harvard educated, and his attempts to convince her to detransition. He knows I left my family to transition and told me to lie to them and say that it was grade issues, Eden wrote at the time. He like constantly says I look like a man and a teenager that's confused, which is fine because I have piercings and dyed hair, but I'm just having fun with those things and they don't make me a woman. Nobody misgenders me so purposely like he does. Eden would later find out that Badir had been hired by her parents, she wrote. She was a Saudi immigrant in America. She came here to go to school, so she was like a Saudi immigrant. But this was like right after she graduated. In Eden's note, she detailed how she eventually stopped hormone replacement therapy, changed her clothes, and succumbed to the pressures to detransition. After a meeting with her parents, she wrote, Badir bought her a flight back to Saudi Arabia. Friends told Vice News she moved back sometime in mid-December. Hayden said he received a text from Eden in early December asking him to pick her up before she replied saying, I don't need it anymore. Then radio silence, said Hayden. According to Eden's note and her friends, Eden tried to continue hormone therapy replacement in secret while in Saudi Arabia, but her parents found her hormones more than once. This was according to Eden's note. It all came out. Her parents admitted that Badir, P, and Cole were hired to get Eden back to Saudi Arabia. They also berated her and called her a freak. The day after Eden posted her note, her family's Twitter and Telegram channels posted that she had died. Eden's father did not respond to a request to comment, nor did the Saudi embassy in Washington. You think the Saudi embassy is going to say anything? The Saudi embassy probably orchestrated this whole thing. Politicians peddling anti-trans policies often say that they're doing it to protect children, but trans people rarely regret transitioning. In fact, a new study found that only 0.3% of the 1,989 patients voiced regret. When trans people do experience regret, it's most often caused by societal stigma and lack of family support. Forced detransitioning can put a trans person's mental health at grave risk. I mean, I don't understand how you could even do hormone therapy without your parents knowing. Like, hormone therapy completely changes your body. I mean, at some point your parents would find out. You know what I mean? At some point, her dad is an official in the Saudi government. This makes a lot of sense. This is as much as a murder-suicide, Zoe said. Gender dysphoria and social isolation and the shame can be so bad, and having her hormones constantly confiscated. The things that she was going through were so insane, and it wasn't just a mental health issue. I don't think most people could survive that, trans or otherwise. I mean, I agree. They lured her into DC. They put her in a hotel room. They basically love bombed her and then took away everything she knew, made her so dependent that she was forced to fly back to Saudi, tried to continue her hormone therapy, wasn't allowed to do her hormone therapy. I'm surprised that she continued trying to do hormone therapy in Saudi. Like, I would have, I'm gonna be honest, I don't know if I would have been able to survive that. You're stripping away a person from their complete bodily autonomy, right? Like, we're not talking about just their autonomy to transition. You're taking away their right to like be independent, go outside, be able to think for themselves. You are literally taking away everything from them and you're forcing them, all of that aside, like, you're taking away from them, you're abusing them, you're emotionally abusing them, you're also not allowing them to transition. Yeah, that's gonna hurt anybody, trans or not trans. Like, honestly, I personally think if it wasn't for the help of the P person that like literally lured her into that hotel room, they would have never been able to have this happen. So like, the American government is somehow, some way implicit in this, and I'm just really scared that this is gonna get swept under the rug like everything else does. And it's so sad because no one's covering this. I mean, Vice did a story about this and so did Rolling Stone. I saw Vosh uploaded a video about it, but nobody is talking about it. I just really wanted to talk about this story. This is a very sad and tragic story. I don't want y'all to like look at this story and be like every Middle Eastern person is barbaric. This is 100% her family who was in the Saudi government working with the American government to orchestrate this whole entire thing. I just don't want us to like conflate this with being Middle Eastern, right? Because it's not. Like, there's a lot of Middle Eastern people that do not operate like this. Let me pause, okay? Obviously, trans violence, especially towards trans women of color, is rampant, right? They're arguably the most at-risk people in our society. With that being said, though, I will say that this situation is very unique in its own way, right? And I just wouldn't want anybody to conflate this with the whole entire region of the Middle East. I just can't imagine like how scared she must have been, you know what I mean? In DC, doesn't know anybody, doesn't know how to navigate, is alone with this weird man that may or may not have like sexually assaulted her or abused her, somehow sent her back to Saudi. Like everything about this story just like hit a nerve with me. I feel like she could have had such an amazing and bright light, you know what I mean? Bright light, bright life. This is why I built a platform, right? So that I could talk about stories that aren't really being covered by mass media. Because honestly, Vice is a big news outlet, but I wouldn't necessarily consider them mass media, right? I don't know. Usually I can keep it together. For this one, I just couldn't.